All right, everyone, here we go. Language development theories in the classroom. On lesson 4, we looked at sort of the overall concept of language development theories. And now we're going to look at, as I alluded to, the idea that these are alive and well in the classroom, and that you, as an individual teacher, will probably align with one over another. Usually you're kind of a combination of two, but these are definitely sort of the foundations of what you're seeing and decisions that you're seeing made in classrooms. And it's important, again, that you know why you're making these decisions, what theory it's based on, and so that you're not just kind of rudderless in the classroom. So that's what today is looking at. So during our collaborate time, be ready to discuss these theories in the context of your practicum or experience with children. So your practicum from last year, from 2 years ago, if you do any kind of summer camps, or you have your own kids, or you babysit, so sort of any experience with children, you will run into these theories. Also think of scenarios in the classroom and start to link what happened to a theory. So again, that theory in practice, and you'll be asked to write a scenario based on experience from a particular theoretical background. So again, just kind of getting you prepared for our collaborate time later in the week. Okay, so let's start in. Why bother? Why do we bother with theories and research on language development? Why don't we just kind of go for it? Because without theories based on research, we cannot create an evidence-based practice. Again, we're kind of rudderless. We just go with the whim of whatever's happening out there, or we go with the whim of how we were taught, or it grounds what you do in evidence-based practice, so that there's some evidence that this is the way, a good way, a bad way, and why each way is slightly different. And then without an evidence-based practice, our everyday decisions in the field become rudderless and chaotic, and we whirlwind students through a myriad of trial and error situations. That's not the kind of teacher you want to be. You don't want to be, I mean, you're going to go in and wade in and be like, whoa, that's not what I wanted, and wade back out. But you really want to be thinking about these things much before you get in front of the students. So that's why we bother even connecting theories and research here together. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay. Again, as we go through this lecture today, think about all of these practical experiences: your practicum, your own classroom experience, your teachers, your own thoughts and ideas around each theory. How would you implement this theory in your classroom, children in your life, and start to link it to reading. So start to be bringing everything that you know together in, because you will again use this during our collaborate time. Okay, so let's jump in. What does applying behaviorism in the classroom actually look like? So there will be, remember, behaviorism is all about external behaviors. It's about response and stimulus, and then rewarding, punishing when you don't like the behavior. So basically, there are lots of positive and negative reinforcements. Makes sense, because that's kind of the foundation of the theory. You'll hear lots of compliments for positive behavior, maybe detention for not following a class rule, that kind of thing. There's a lot of rote learning, lots of memorization, lots of repetition, lots of skill-based scenarios, lots of flashcards in order to memorize sight words, if we're talking specifically about language in that K-2 type area. There's more individual work than group learning, because of course you are trying to control the behavior of that one particular child. So the child learning in a group there's not really a big benefit of that social interaction for you as a behaviorist. And there's all sorts of reward systems. So there's if you are ever in a class that there's stickers, or there's a chart where you get to, you read so many books and you get to go up and you get to move your little bookworm up. That's behaviorism, where you are trying to get the children to do something that you believe is worthy, and then you're rewarding them or punishing them. So any kind of stickers, stars, candy. I guess you don't give out candy too much anymore, but any kind of reward system. So we're gonna, in our collaborate time, we're going to talk about Cynthia and Mr. Green. So be ready to talk about how Mr. Green looked after rewards and punishments in his classroom. Okay, possible advantages. There's definitely some advantages of behaviorism. Basically, the behavior is shaped quickly and can be measured. It's pretty obvious when the child is doing what you are rewarding them or they're not. The learners adapt to the environment fairly quickly. Kids are pretty quick at going, okay, if I line up quietly, then I get an extra 2 minutes at recess. If I don't get those extra minutes. So they're very good at adapting. It's pretty orderly, classroom's orderly, and students are usually well behaved. Students are usually obedient to the teacher because they want to get the reward. There is actually a fair bit of teacher-student communication because the teacher is kind of constantly trying to shape the behavior to go one way or the other. And a reward system is reality in life. You ultimately are here because you want to be a teacher, which ultimately you get paid to be a teacher, and you have a nice, decent lifestyle as being a teacher. So that's a ultimate reward. So it's a reality in our society that behaviorism is part of how we run. How we run a lot of things. My sister-in-law, for example, worked for Johnson & Johnson, and the more that she sold, the more perks and rewards that she would get. So she was an amazing saleswoman, and she got all these trips and things, but she was very motivated by those rewards. So it's a reality. It's out there. Okay. Possible disadvantages are students don't really internalize the reasoning behind why they're doing it. They might arrive on time because they'll be punished if they don't, but they don't really realize why it's important to arrive on time, that it's respectful to the teachers, respectful to their colleagues, but it's only about the actual action of arriving on time. They may adapt to a poor environment. So maybe the environment that the teacher is setting up is actually not really it's not positive, but a child will adapt to whatever environment it is when they're being rewarded or punished. Ultimately, maybe the behavior is not actually the true indicator of understanding, right? So they may do okay on a true-false test, but do they actually understand the content? And it really doesn't take into account different learning styles at all. Maybe a child really needs that social interaction to learn and is not actually that interested in punishments and rewards, and so this doesn't work for them at all. Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to, on your PowerPoint, just stop the video, go and watch this clip. Don't get distracted by the mouse. And what do you think? What do you think about the teacher? And what do you think about each of the students? There are 2 students in this. So stop the video, stop my video, and go and watch this little clip. But I'm going to keep going into nativism. So hang on here. Gotta get my... Basically, how does applying nativism or universal grammar what does it look like? So this theory is probably, of all 3 theories, is the one that it's not concerned with how children learn the language, but it's really more connected to how the mind itself works. So what is the brain actually doing when it's learning the language? So the application of nativism and universal grammar in classroom teaching is not quite as obvious as the other theories, as it's more concerned with the mental abstractions of language. However, if you're a nativist, you would be the most interested in how the mind learns language, not so much how the child particularly is learning language, but you would be interested in watching children because you're interested in how the mind actually learns the language. Okay, so there's that abstract mental representations of language, and that it's not important. Here we go. The teaching of the English language acquisition principles, such as syntax, semantics, all those things that you now know of, it's not seen as important because these principles are viewed as universal, and really they exist in all human languages. They, so the actual specific teaching of semantics, syntax, vocab is not quite as important. What a nativist would say is it's all the focus of learning a language and needs to be based on designing optimum input for triggering the mind. So triggering the mind will actually is actually what a nativist in the classroom would be wanting to do. And let's look at what that means. Okay, so when you trigger the mind in a nativist classroom, is grammar would actually be a trigger, because grammar is particular to each language. So the child understands how to understand the language acquisition, but they need the particular language triggers. So the student would need language exercise in class, give learners practice with rule application. And errors are actually quite acceptable and a byproduct of language learning, because I'm just going to read this. Error analysis and correction is appropriate as child has innate ability but still needs help with the specifics of language grammar. So that's where a nativist would say this is what is important for the child to learn language. And if you are a believer in the nativist theory, then this is how you would support language acquisition in the classroom. Okay. So what does applying it look like in the classroom? You would have language-rich experiences in order to refine the actual learning of that particular language. There's little time spent on how to learn a language, but just immersion in the language. So there's kind of a key. French immersion teachers, Spanish immersion teachers, they probably have a little bit of nativism in them, because their attitude is, I'm just going to speak French to these kindergarten kids. And those kindergarten kids, because they have the mental capability to understand the language, they will figure it out even though they have never heard a word of language. Okay, so an elementary language arts lesson, for example, would need to teach homonyms, where something is spelt the same but a different meaning, as those would be particular to the English language. So they'd have to go after sort of those particular things about the language, but not sort of those overall concepts of the language. Okay, cognitivism. Here we go. Good old Piaget. Basically, you would focus, as a cognitivist, you would focus on the process of the child's thinking and not really about its product. Because remember, it's all about cognition. It's all about what is going on in the brain, and the way that you support what's going on in the brain is through hands-on learning. So our young lady here who's actually got her hands on something, that's how we build the language skills in the brain. So recognition of the crucial role of children's self-initiated active involvement in learning activities. Again, it's all about hands-on. There's a de-emphasis on practices aimed at making children like little human ideology. We really see that children think and learn in a different manner than adults. They're not little humans. They process language differently than we do. There's an acceptance of individual differences in developmental progress. We go, okay, not all of the kids will be at exactly the same spot in their cognitive development, and teacher is really the facilitator versus the dictator or the all-knowing power. Okay. More ways that cognitivism can appear in the classroom is there are lots of concrete props and visual aids, because of course we want that hands-on ability. Instructions are pretty short, and actions as well as words are used. So when you're giving instructions to grade 1, you would actually have the toy, the picture, the letter, whatever it is, and you would use your words and you would then let them see it. Perspective, students would be encouraged to see the world from somebody else's point of view, from like it's not just your point of view, it's absolutely what's going on around you. Lots of hands-on experience, lots of hands-on practice, use of familiar examples. So the cognitivist would use maybe a story that they have a little bit of background information in. Maybe they've read a storybook so they can actually picture the book and the pictures, and then they bring in maybe some math concepts and link it to something familiar. And logic problems that require logical analytical thinking are used. So sort of starting to get those kids using the language in a really analytical manner. There we go. It's a tough word right now. Okay, so what does it look like in the classroom if you are a cognitivist? You're good with mistakes. You're totally good with mistakes. You have lots of group work. You let them dream big and then figure out how to get there. You have lots of open-ended questions, and there's a real respect for the variety of learners that are in your classroom. Okay, let's go on to this. Is what I want you to do. I want you to stop the video and then just go and look at this. These are just some possible classroom activities that a cognitivist might employ. And I want you to, again, think about in your practicum, have you seen anything like this? Have you encountered anything like this? And now start to go, oh, that's why this teacher did this in their classroom, because they have a cognitivist bent to their theory of teaching. Okay, finally, interactionism. Again, if you are at River Heights, at Wilson, at Sauer, I would say that most of the teachers there are interactionists, where they very much focused on language acquisition and knowledge through social collaborative constructs. Okay, so this is where it is very much not about filling. Remember, I talked about opening the head and filling it and filling the head like a behaviorist. This is all about constructing their own understanding and knowledge, and that they actually bring quite a bit of knowledge to the table already. And just collaboration. It's all about collaboration. It's all about coming together and working together. Okay, so what does this look like in the classroom? Teachers must plan activities that encompass really not only what the children are capable of doing on their own, but what they can learn with the help of others. Okay. There's lots of cooperative learning activities with groups of children at different levels. So groups are not like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. They're all mixed so that they can really learn from each other. Teacher knows each student's level and engages in graduated intervention. So this is that scaffolding, right? That you know where that child is at and you just keep helping them get there. You want them to be working in their zone of proximal development, where they are constantly just a little bit beyond. They're striving, to be a little bit beyond where they actually are, but with your help and a little nudge, they can actually get there. Okay. Basically determine all the concepts your students need to master in class. So you really have to have a bird's eye view of the objectives and where your students are at. Spend considerable time determining what concepts your students will likely already have mastered and which ones you're working towards mastery with them on. And again, scaffolding, structuring your activities so your students have appropriate scaffolding for practicing the concepts. And then once you've scaffolded, you've given them the steps to get there, then you back off, you let them go, and then you re-scaffold to take them to a different level. Okay, and I think I can't do this here. I think this is what we don't want to happen in an interactionist classroom. So direct instruction is needed in an interactionist classroom, but try to avoid this kind of teaching. And I think this will be a little bit of a humorous end to your time with these theories in the classroom. Watch maybe a minute of this and have a little bit of a chuckle. It's from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. All right, hope you enjoyed. We'll see you for Collaborate time.